Everyone, first I propose that we all stand up. With enthusiastic applause, let's warmly welcome Khenpo Sodargye to our School for Teaching. Thank you. Please be seated. The Venerable Khenpo Sodargye is from Larung 5 Sciences Buddhist Academy. He relies on His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche as his root guru. With benevolent heart and kind thoughts, he teaches the Sangha of the Han regions single-mindedly, tirelessly. His writings are voluminous, teaching skillfully, liberating countless people. He donates to support education, visits disaster areas, helps those in danger and difficulty, widely extending compassion. He's been to Europe, America, Southeast Asia, and many other countries and regions to teach the Dharma. He's gathered with students from Peking University, Tsinghua, Renmin University, Zhejiang University, Fudan, and other universities, helping university people explore the source of wisdom, watering the flowers of the soul. This has had enormous influence domestically and internationally. Today, as a finance college, Guangdong University of Finance, we welcome this eminent monk and great master. This is a rare opportunity. Because Guangdong, with its industrial upgrading, also needs cultural upgrading. The financial industry as a pillar industry also needs spiritual and cultural construction. The numerous students of Guangdong University of Finance even more need a great wisdom for settling their lives and perfecting themselves. Good. I'll say no more idle words. Next, please, the Venerable Khenpo Sodargye will teach us about wisdom life, harmonious society. Everyone, please welcome him.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm studying together with the teachers and students of the Finance College. I think for me this is also a very good opportunity. I cherish it very much. I think what we're studying together today, Wisdom Life, Harmonious Society, actually for me, wisdom life should be of great concern and attention. When people come to this world, ways of living are diverse. But most importantly, we need a wisdom of altruism. Having altruistic wisdom, only then are you yourself happy. Having altruistic wisdom, people around you will also be joyful. Having altruistic wisdom, your own future, it should be said, is boundlessly bright. I've always felt that our wisdom must definitely have altruistic wisdom keep pace. This is called, in Buddhism, wisdom compassion. Wisdom must definitely be connected with compassion, altruistic mind. Wisdom must absolutely not be a kind of cleverness that harms others and harms oneself. I once read the famous Zizhi Tongjian from the Han regions. In it, it's said that those who possess both virtue and talent are called sages. If one has neither virtue nor talent, they're called foolish people, stupid people. If virtue surpasses talent, they're called gentlemen. If talent surpasses virtue, this is called petty people. These words, for me in life, should be said to have played a very great role. The students here are all studying finance. I think many students studying finance in the future will face various things in society, especially some so-called modern monetary temptations. As a scholar, one must definitely have a kind of altruistic wisdom. Having altruistic wisdom, whatever environment one lives in, they'll be very joyful. If one doesn't have altruistic wisdom wearing such red robes, in the Buddhist world this is called a monastic of Mahayana Buddhism. But if we as monastics don't have altruistic mind, actually we don't count as Mahayana Buddhists. Monks without altruism, nuns without altruism, leaders without altruism, any worldly person without altruism, I think on the surface they seem very successful, but actually they're very selfish. Therefore, altruism should be the main aspiration in our life's wisdom today, or a point for everyone to contemplate. Previously, at the end of the Qing dynasty, there was a novelist called Liu Yi. He also has a poem that for me I still have a certain memory. He said, "When everyone values the public good, then the world is at peace. When everyone pursues private gain, then the world is in great chaos." The meaning is, if every person in the world has an altruistic heart, prioritizes public affairs, cares for society, then the whole world will be at peace. If every person is very selfish and all their actions are primarily self-centered, then it's very possible the entire world will be in great chaos. So at this time, all the teachers here present, I also just had contact with many teachers and leaders. I indeed feel it's different from the atmosphere of many other universities, because here there's a certain free space. Everyone's minds are very open. Moreover, many teachers go all out, thinking of students' futures, wanting to build for their life paths some kind of very bright road. Many people contemplate this aspect very correctly. I think under their such careful nurturing, I think many students, their futures, it should be said, have a certain promise. Of course, in this process, in the process of chatting with some teachers just now, I also discovered indeed, as some teachers said, each person has a different destiny. This destiny in Buddhism is called karma. This karma is very difficult to change. The Buddha, in the Sutra of 100 Karmas and other scriptures, discussed that karma is quite vast. It covers the entire world. Its area is even larger than the current internet, and its complexity is something that ordinary humans now still haven't completely comprehended, its most profound principles. It's just that in some places, for people like us who study or research this our whole lives, now in the world, indeed the principle of good has good retribution, evil has evil retribution, exists without deception. On this point, perhaps some individual students, their hearts are relatively kind, but perhaps they still don't know the true existence of so-called karma. If you don't believe now, it doesn't matter. But when your age is relatively high, or when you leave this world, perhaps it won't be as imagined in the world. It's not that whatever you want to do will succeed. It's not like this. It's also connected with our previous life and the life before that. In our life after life, Buddhism calls this Alaya-vijnana. In the alaya of the mind, many seeds are planted. Why is it that here, two students both study finance, but finally after graduation, one person is very successful, while one person is very unlucky? Nothing goes smoothly. Nothing can ultimately succeed. This indicates it has a certain relationship with one's own karma. Similarly, two children from the same family, but one person is both intelligent and very beautiful, successful in all aspects, while another person is neither intelligent nor good-looking, and moreover receives various discriminations from society. So why is this? Actually, there are many complex issues here. These complex issues are explained very clearly in Buddhism. Of course, Buddhism, here I must clarify, is not fatalism. It's not entirely produced by previous karma. Part of it should be produced by karma, and another part is also produced by various causes and conditions in this life. After studying this, perhaps those present will also understand. What I want to say today is, we want a life of wisdom. Actually, I often think that studying, actually in the world, should be a very joyful thing. But when we study, it should be knowledge beneficial to self and others, or knowledge beneficial to oneself. The difference between these two is very great. In this choice process, what we perhaps need to choose is what we choose is what's beneficial to others. In Buddhism, it's discussed that knowledge beneficial to others is studied by very noble people. Knowledge beneficial to oneself is knowledge of middling people, while knowledge beneficial to neither self nor others, harmful knowledge is actually knowledge of inferior people. Therefore, in our choice process, it should be knowledge beneficial to both self and others. Finance is also the same. I think what will become in the future, especially many students, their prospects, their future, what they'll become, it's probably difficult to determine. But generally speaking, all need a kind of altruistic heart. No matter in what society, no matter in what environment, this kind of altruistic heart is needed. Having such an altruistic heart, it's very possible some things will exceed your imagination. Here I also recall a story from before. It seems in a previous period, I also saw some materials. Later, this principle, I still contemplated for a period. It is said that in 1950, at that time, Columbia University in America had a professor called Benjamin Graham. At that time, they accepted students every year. When accepting students, Professor Benjamin posed a question. The question he posed was, suppose you have 2 loaves of bread. What do you plan to do with them? Some students in the process of answering said, I'll eat 1 loaf now, 1 for dinner. What the professor wrote for them was, you're very thrifty, very economical. Some students said, I'll eat 1 loaf myself and give 1 as charity or to a beggar. Below he wrote, you're very kind. Some students said, I'll eat both loaves myself. The professor didn't say anything, just smiled. One student's answer, Professor Benjamin was already captivated. What did it say? He said, of these 2 loaves, I'll eat 1 myself and exchange 1 for narcissus flowers. Everyone probably also knows what narcissus flowers are. From then on, Professor Benjamin began to pay attention to this student. Originally, it's now who everyone widely knows, Warren Buffett. At that time, he was 20 years old. Later, Professor Benjamin kept paying great attention, teaching him all his wisdom, techniques, and abilities. He felt his thinking was very unique and very promising. Later, in 1957, Buffett at that time used $300,000 to start speculating in stocks, constantly speculating. Then the stock snowball grew bigger and bigger until 2005. At that time, everyone may also be clear, Buffett's entire wealth was $44 billion, becoming second only to the world's richest. In the second year, 2006, at that time Buffett announced he would donate more than $30 billion entirely to charitable causes. At this time, many people discovered that originally his narcissus flowers were displaying very beautifully. By 2008, his wealth was approximately $67 billion, already surpassing Bill Gates, becoming the world's richest. So from this very simple story, of course, it is not that everyone will necessarily be the same as Buffett and Bill Gates. Otherwise, many people also dream of this. But here, a special kind of aspiration, a special kind of motivation, altruistic heart. In life, it's undeniable that indeed it has a very powerful force. In Buddhism, it's said, what is wisdom? In Buddhism, there's one called Sadharma Smrityupasthana Sutra. In Sadharma Smrityupasthana Sutra, it says at all times, single-mindedly aspiring to diligently cultivate good dharma and abandoning unwholesome dharma. This is called the characteristic of wisdom. Truly wise life. In our body, speech, and mind, everything should, as much as possible, maintain kindness. Just now some teachers said, when there's a mosquito on our hand, do you smack it away or do you release it? My principle is it's best to release it. Why? Because it's a life. This life actually also manifests a kind of what kind? It needs a kind of self. That is to say, we request other lives as we do for ourselves. This is a kind of value system of life. This value system we manifest in this present life, in life's various aspects, the most critical moments. At the same time, our behaviors in this present life will also become some causes for future lives, life after life. Among those present, some perhaps acknowledge the existence of past and future lives. Whether teachers or students, some people feel that if we don't acknowledge the existence of past and future lives, many principles can't be explained clearly, they should exist. While some people themselves think perhaps this kind of thing is very hard to establish, very hard to prove. But actually, as one who for many years has studied Buddhist knowledge, and at the same time, I especially like to study various Eastern and Western life sciences and psychological sciences, in my research process, in my study process, I have no reason to say past and future lives don't exist. They definitely will exist. So, since they exist, every move we make today becomes what? Becomes causes for future lives. Therefore, here I especially hope, many young students present, when you arrive in society, perhaps you'll encounter various things. At this time, do as many good deeds as possible, restrain evil deeds as much as possible, otherwise perhaps temporarily you won't discover what is evil and what is good. But actually, whether in your body, your mind, your family, your work, in the future, many, many evil karmic results will also appear. At this time, we can only accept with tears and crying, joyfully creating evil karma. But at the end, accepting with tears and crying, this is a very frightening thing. So now, many worldly people, I always feel sometimes indeed it's because of our education, our environment, influences from various aspects. Now many people only care about the immediate, only care about money, not caring about morality, not caring about values, not caring about anything, including gratitude, filial piety, and respect for those with merit. These they don't care about very much. They just desperately want their own kind of happiness. Of course, some things are practical problems. Many of you young people may think, after I graduate, how do I establish a family and career? How do I buy a house? How do I have a car, have money, have what? Constantly thinking about such things in your hearts. During the day you're thinking, at night you're also thinking. Finally, it becomes work pressure, academic pressure, life pressure, many pressures piled together, therefore called pressure mountain grade. Now many people, although they haven't yet arrived in the world, haven't formally started walking life's road, but they themselves also feel when they arrive in society, it probably won't be very happy. There should be various pressures constantly waiting for you. Perhaps some students feel graduation is very happy. Actually, where is true happiness? In student days or in life? It's hard to say. At noon today, I received a phone call from a teacher. He said, I very much want to study, but now there's no way. I've already established a family. Every day now, I envy my student days' beautiful life. I very much want to return to student days, but there's no way. Time can't flow backward. I'm especially sad, especially painful, he said this way. I think this is one person's inner voice. But actually, when we arrive at work, there are also various different pressures. Especially now in school, many people study techniques, study knowledge, but they don't study morality. Honestly, many people's interactions with others are very poor. Many people feel that after entering society, whatever I think I should do, as long as there's reason, it's all acceptable. Actually, it's not like this. This society is very complex. This society, it should be said, is relatively difficult to coordinate with, especially if your communication ability is poor, your interaction ability is poor. Then perhaps various departments, various levels won't necessarily need such a person as you. Perhaps on your diploma, it's written what major you graduated from. Looking at it makes people very happy, but your character can't keep up. Especially, I've encountered many who graduated from higher education institutions, but because in higher education institutions they only studied some techniques, they didn't study education in gratitude. They can't coordinate with leaders above, can't interact with middle-level people, and for people below, they can't use compassion to care for them. Also, now many college students and many people's psychological endurance is especially poor. When a leader criticizes once with one phrase, turning into enemies, harboring resentment, from then on, naturally their own futures are greatly impacted. So now in society, in schools, there needs to be character education. Now our character is even more important than technique, more important than knowledge. But in many schools, moral education has completely become empty. This, it should be said, now many teachers, in the future, not only should they discuss with students specialized techniques and knowledge in school, there is no excuse for this. But more importantly, many young people in school, previously in society, many parents first taught some family education, teaching them how to be human, how to receive people and handle things, how to conduct oneself in the world. But many parents, especially those born after the 70s, 80s, or 90s, basically also don't educate their children. Because they don't educate well, finally the child has already arrived at school. After arriving at school, teachers also, toward them, besides completing their curriculum, basically won't teach how to be human. So, this way, from elementary school to university, these 10 plus to 20 years or so, all for technique. Now the so-called exam-oriented education indeed, has received many impacts and problems regarding character. After this, we especially hope, no matter which teacher is teachers, their own life experiences, experiences of gratitude, and also how in the future, with compassion, do we safeguard society. Don't have all eyes and goals entirely staring at money, constantly in a selfish state of mind. This way, we're very likely to, in the end, still not wake up. Previously, I also told others this story. Probably in the 1930s and 1940s, in Hollywood in America, there was an especially famous person called Roscoe. Among actors, he was very obese. His body was 170 kilograms. When walking on the street, it was very difficult, panting heavily. At that time, he was famous for his obesity. He was especially talented. But what was this person's characteristic? He especially loved money, loved making money. Every day he would desperately make money. His body was especially unsuitable for exercise. Many doctors advised him to rest well. Your body isn't suitable for performing everywhere, lecturing everywhere. But for money, he went everywhere. He also said, although I have very, very much money, I especially like money, I still want to desperately make money. So he constantly, non-stop, went to various countries. Finally, in 1936, once in the performance process, he suddenly got sick. His heart wasn't okay. Finally, he went to the hospital emergency center. They began emergency treatment for him. So, in the rescue process, when he was at death's door, he discovered. He said, although your body is very obese, if life is truly to be maintained, what's needed is merely a small, small heart. That is to say, your body is very fat, but if the meaning of life is to exist, just one heart is enough. But he didn't know. Later, the director of this emergency center said, Roscoe awakened too late. This hospital took this phrase as a lesson for later generations, placing it in a prominent hospital lobby. It said that after nearly 50 years at that time, American oil tycoon Merle, once also in the process of discussing an especially significant business deal, suddenly fell ill again, then went there for emergency treatment. At this time, he brought all his company's faxes, telephones entirely to the hospital, working while being treated. Many doctors advised him, don't do this, otherwise you're very dangerous. Later, he still didn't listen. Once, in the process of walking, he saw this phrase in the lobby. He asked about its origin and background. Later, he discovered actually, originally, he himself also, for money, constantly busy, busy until half of life, still hadn't awakened. What exactly was he pursuing? Then he immediately removed all his faxes, turned off his phone, and required his finance department to, within 1 month, settle his economic accounts well, and after a period, make a major decision. Later, he sold all his companies, then he lived a carefree life by himself. He believed his life at a certain time couldn't constantly be busy. If constantly busy pursuing, it seems this life at the end is very fragile. But when it departs, oneself perhaps still hasn't felt it. Actually, sometimes I discover many in the world, whether leaders, entrepreneurs, or many people in the world. Now, it seems in our minds there's only one pursuit, happiness. The purpose of pursuing happiness is through wealth and status. Some are busy with wealth. Some are busy with status. Some are busy with their own different, of course, hoping to truly acquire, like in ancient times, artistic, literary, truly valuable. Such knowledge is very little. So sometimes I feel now society is indeed a bit complex. I hope many students, while studying in school, perhaps also need to reflect. When we humans come to this world, perhaps the time isn't very long. When you depart, what will you believe in? Originally, Newton said, people of shallow wisdom, they'll leave God. Once their wisdom becomes abundant, they'll obediently come before God again. What he said at that time was, people of shallow wisdom, whether with God or truth or Buddha, are very far away. At a certain time, oneself perhaps will reflect, after reflecting various aspects, what we call worldly and transcendent, much wisdom accumulates. At that time, perhaps you'll understand, you'll properly come to truth. But when on this truth, look, what your state of mind becomes is very hard to say. The Buddha said in Buddhist scriptures, foolish without wisdom, greedily seeking false joy in suffering. That is to say, foolish people without wisdom. They bitterly pursue something, but finally they take suffering's illusion as a kind of happiness. Now in the world there are many, some people drink alcohol and get drunk, that kind of dazed drunkenness they think is a kind of happiness. Some people fundamentally don't know what they've become. Now I hear in some entertainment venues, as a monastic I can't go, also don't want to go. Generally speaking, for my values, I still very much want to seek some meaningful truth. But now in the world, everyone also knows, actually there aren't many people who truly seek wisdom. Originally, Emperor Kangxi said, if our heart-mind is kind, then talent and learning can be perfected. If our heart-mind isn't kind, then what use is talent and learning? Now, what's most important, what's most fundamental for us? It's that you should have a very kind heart, should have a kind of conscience. Such a mentality is very important. Otherwise, I think, especially for those studying economics, finance, that no matter whether in the future you're in banks or securities companies, in many processes of dealing with money, some people's greed gets stimulated, then gradually increases. After this, harming oneself, harming others, it's very frightening. Some of you may think, doesn't Buddhism always say greed should be restrained and eliminated? Actually, Buddhism doesn't completely want to eliminate all greed. It's just that excessive greed brings us a kind of harm. This is fact. In life, it's also like this. Buddhism often discusses try as much as possible not to have greed. Because excessive greed, for example, some people are attached to sleep. If you're attached to sleep, when you should sleep, you can sleep. But when you shouldn't sleep, you'll still sleep. And moreover, this kind of sleep actually brings to our bodies, to our entire spirit, very great pressure and suffering. So, excessive sleep addiction brings disorder to physiology. It's unreasonable. So-called gluttony, our normal life is allowed. But if you're excessively gluttonous, every day just eating and drinking, besides this, if there's no meaning to human existence, then this also, we won't even mention benefiting society. Benefiting family is also very difficult. Also, excessive addiction to play. Every day, some people don't work well, don't study well, don't do truly meaningful things well. Every day just touring mountains and waters. Besides playing, if there's no other mentality, this is also a kind of harm. Also, for example, attachment to watching TV, watching movies, watching pornography, etc. This way, gradually it brings a kind of defilement to our 5 sense organs. Then, through the 5 sense organs, it also brings even more defilement to one's own mind. These defilements, gradually, I think, much suffering will be brought. So, in the study process, actually it's studying a kind of correct knowledge. This kind of correct knowledge, in Buddhism, honestly, I'm not here today to spread Buddhism. Spreading Buddhism. In any school, I also don't need to teach it. Although I have the identity of a Buddhist, but no matter whether you're an artist or have Buddhist identity, or what identity, what we need in school is what? It's truth. This kind of truth, we don't need to use a kind of narrow religion and narrow racial protection. Definitely, this truth that every person aspires to, this is very important. What Buddhism advocates is the view of compassion. This view of compassion isn't needed only by Buddhism. We humans all need it. As long as humanity exists in this world, actually this view of compassion cannot be left behind. Once humans have already left compassion, probably this world will become very disgusting. If a family leaves this view of compassion, relationships between people will also become strained. Including families, there's also no way to be harmonious. So I think those of you present, perhaps you don't understand some Buddhist principles. Buddhist principles, you don't necessarily have to understand them. But these truths discussed in Buddhism, if you don't understand, don't study, don't practice them, I believe, coming to this world is very regrettable. You should, when you have opportunity, go to some temples and take a look. No matter whether you're touring or want to take photos or want to use whatever other method, when you arrive at a temple, you'll feel this kind of temple, intangibly, brings us a kind of power. This power has two kinds. One is the power of compassion, one kind is the power of purity, one kind is the power of wisdom. This kind of wisdom, it should be said, is a kind of supreme wisdom, not worldly cleverness wisdom. Cleverness wisdom, everyone has it. But this kind of wisdom, in profundity, intangibly, has a kind of helping others, and at the same time can also realize the true nature of all phenomena. This kind of wisdom, perhaps many people find it very difficult to possess. Therefore, some young people actually need to read some profound ancient books. In the thought of the ancients, it should be said, there's knowledge that surpasses the present. There's some knowledge surpassing the present that many people perhaps find very hard to imagine. This kind of knowledge, I believe some students present, or teachers, everyone should understand. Only this way can it be beneficial to one's own life. Actually, nowadays in society, no matter what everyone studies is also primarily self-centered. Of course, on one hand, self-improvement is also needed. Whether a country or a people, a young person, they have a kind of strong will. But most importantly, if under the premise of altruistic mind, under the premise of compassion, we establish a kind of wisdom, then the entire society will also be harmonious. Previously, Einstein also said, only our giving to others is a kind of devotion, then life has meaning. Only if I give or dedicate, then life has meaning. This principle, in much of life, everyone can reflect. I think I'll probably just say this much.